My sister raised her beer and her voice at the same time. "This is the failure of our family," she said, pointing straight at me. Laughter rolled across my dad's backyard in Edmond. Tina's sharp giggle, my father's low chuckle, cousins smirking over paper plates. My name is Marama Brooks, 35, and in that moment every eye treated me like a punchline. Skylar stood there proud, her hand hooked through her boss's arm, like I was just a story she was telling for laughs. He watched them quietly, hands in his pockets, gaze moving from their faces to mine. Then his smile thinned. "Interesting," he said, "because you're fired." The yard went silent. They didn't know the man they were trying to impress already answered to me, and that I had years of receipts. Have you ever watched family humiliation backfire in real time? The silence after Skylar's firing didn't surprise me. What surprised me was how familiar the sting felt, the same quiet ache I'd carried since childhood, settling back into my chest like it had been waiting. The party started moving again in small, uneasy ripples, forks scraping plates, someone clearing their throat, Tina whispering to a cousin as if the truth on that table could be contained with gossip. I stayed still, my hands resting on the laptop bag, feeling the weight of years pressing into my palms. When Skylar finally looked at me, her expression held something I recognized instantly. Not regret, not confusion, just disbelief that the world had dared to shift out of her favor. It reminded me of every small moment that led us here. Back then, the house in Edmond always smelled like Tina's perfume, sweet, expensive, everywhere. I was 17, still raw from losing my mom, when Dad remarried and Skylar arrived with her curls and ready-made confidence. She fit into the family like a missing puzzle piece. I became the extra corner no one knew where to place. Skylar got ballet lessons and a red Mustang for her 16th birthday. I got hand-me-downs and a bus pass taped at the edges. When I needed braces, Tina said we couldn't afford them. 2 months later, Skylar came home with Invisalign and a smile full of approval. Those things were small on their own, but pain doesn't always hit like a storm. Sometimes it drips, slow, constant, until everything beneath it erodes. In college, Dad sat me down at the kitchen table, hands folded like he wished they didn't have to touch the truth. "We're tight on money," he'd said. "Skylar needs private school. Tate needs braces. You're strong, Marama. You'll figure it out." So I commuted an hour each way, working nights at a diner, studying between bus stops under streetlights. When I dropped out from exhaustion and rent, Tina told the neighbors I couldn't handle the pressure. Dad didn't correct her. I learned early that in our family, effort didn't matter. Only the right bloodline did. Standing in that backyard years later, with Skylar staring at me like I had taken something from her, I felt that old ache again. Not sharp, just steady, familiar, the kind of pain that teaches you to stop asking for fairness. And maybe for the first time, I wondered how long I had been carrying a story that wasn't mine to hold anymore. Later that night, I drove back to the old house in Edmond, the one Dad kept after Mom died. The porch light still flickered, same weak glow, same tired rhythm. I stood there for a moment with the empty boxes in my arms, listening to the cicadas hum through the heat. Funny how a place can hold memories the way a body holds bruises, long after the hit lands. Inside, nothing had changed. The same faded rug, the same photo of Dad, Tina, Skylar, and Tate framed on the hallway wall. My mom's picture was gone years ago, tucked into a drawer to keep it safe. I knew what that meant. In the guest room, her things were still stacked neatly, her handwriting labeling each box. I knelt on the carpet, tracing the ink with my thumb. Recipe cards, photo albums, scarves she wore every winter, all the parts of her that nobody bothered to keep except me. That's when I found the velvet pouch. Soft, dusty, out of place. Inside, a plain silver USB drive. No note, no explanation, just my mother's quiet way of saying, "Here, you'll need this." I plugged it into my laptop right there on the floor, the screen glow casting long shadows across the room. File after file appeared. Campaign briefs, taglines, mood boards, the work I'd sacrificed sleep, meals, and whole years to build. My words, my concepts, my layouts. Except they were credited to someone else. Skylar Brooks. I stared at the screen, breath barely moving. 5 years of my work, copied, reused, aired on OKC Channel 9 under her name. The same sister who used to tease me about being a struggling creative. The same sister Dad bragged about for finding her talent. Talent. That word hit differently now. I sat with that discovery longer than I expected. Shock wasn't the feeling. It was something quieter. Something like confirmation. Like this wasn't the moment everything fell apart, but the moment everything finally made sense. She hadn't just been cruel. She'd been stealing from me for years, and Dad never noticed. Or maybe he did. Maybe noticing would have made things too complicated. The next morning, I called Isla, my old freshman roommate, the one who once taught me how to stretch $5 into a week of meals. Her voice was groggy from a late shift, but she told me to come over. "Coffee's on," she said, like it was any normal day. Her apartment sat above a tire shop downtown. Concrete floors, mismatched chairs, warm light, safe. Isla didn't ask questions. She never did. She just plugged in the USB and let the truth speak for itself. She scrolled, paused, scrolled again. Then she leaned back, eyes steady on mine. "These are yours," she said. Not a doubt, not a question, just truth. 5 years of stolen work. 5 years of credit Skylar never earned. 5 years of my life repackaged as hers. The hurt didn't explode. It settled, heavy, certain, quiet. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't break you. Sometimes it simply shows you who you can't be small for anymore. Isla worked for hours, her fingers moving with the calm focus of someone who knew the weight of what she was handling. Metadata, upload logs, timestamps, server IDs. She reconstructed everything until the truth wasn't just visible. It was undeniable. 5 years, thousands of hours. Every late night I spent building something out of nothing. Skylar had woven herself into it like a shadow. When Isla finally closed the laptop, she didn't speak right away. She just pushed my coffee toward me and let me breathe. "It's more than theft," she said softly. "She's been building a career off your life's work." I stared down at the mug. The steam had faded, but the warmth was still there, small, steady. Something I hadn't felt from family in a long time. "Why would she do that?" I whispered. Isla shrugged. "Some people want the reward without the becoming." Becoming. That word hit something deep. Because I knew what becoming looked like. The grind, the fear, the empty bank account, the borrowed dreams. And maybe that was the difference. I had lived every inch of the climb, while Skylar tried to skip straight to the applause. I thought of my mom, of her keeping that USB hidden, protecting my work even when she wasn't there to protect me. It felt like she was telling me something, not about revenge, but about dignity, about not shrinking so others could feel larger. By noon, Isla had built a clean evidence folder, organized, time-stamped, encrypted. It wasn't just proof, it was clarity, and clarity changes everything. That afternoon, while the skyline shimmered outside Isla's dusty apartment window, my phone buzzed with a message from Skylar. "Family BBQ this weekend. Bring dessert, Beckett's coming." Dessert. As if nothing had fractured, as if humiliation was something I should smooth over with cupcakes. I held the phone for a long moment, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger, not spite, just a quiet decision. I didn't have to carry their version of me anymore. "I'll bring the laptop," I typed back. At the barbecue, the sun hit the yard in warm strips of light. Red and gold balloons from Dad's birthday still sagged over the tables. Smoke curled from the grill. Everything looked the same as it had for years, except I didn't feel the same. Skylar floated from group to group, loud, dazzling, pulling Beckett behind her like a trophy. Dad's face glowed with pride. Tina buzzed around with serving spoons and approval. I set my laptop on the table and opened it. No speeches, no build-up, just truth, steady and unembellished. When the files appeared, side-by-side comparisons of my work and her aired segments, the yard stilled. It wasn't the dramatic kind of silence. It was the kind that comes when people suddenly realize what they chose not to see. Fonts identical, taglines copied, dates highlighted, metadata glowing red. Skylar stepped forward, laughter caught in her throat, the way a lie catches when it can't find footing. "What is this? Marama, turn it off." But Beckett leaned in, jaw tightening. He saw it, the pattern, the theft, the breach. and the disappointment in his eyes wasn't for me. "For the record," he said, voice clear, "Marama isn't just your sister. She owns Brookline Energy Creative, the parent company of this station." Dad's hand froze midair, tongs still in his grip. Tina's breath hitched. Tate's phone slipped from her fingers and cracked against the patio stones. Skylar's face drained. You're my boss?" I met her eyes calmly. I always was. The truth didn't shatter her. It revealed her. And in that moment, I understood something my mother must have known long before I did. Family isn't defined by shared blood. It's revealed by who stands with you when truth finally comes to light, and who stood against you long before it did. Skylar's beer slipped from her hand, foaming across the tablecloth, as Beckett laid out each printed log. Upload dates, server IDs, matching file paths. It was all so painfully quiet. Not dramatic, not loud, just truth landing exactly where it belonged. Dad stepped back as if the papers burned. Tina's apron twisted in her hands. Tate stared at the cracked screen of her phone, eyes wide, mouth trembling. And for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink to make their discomfort easier. I simply breathed. Skylar whispered, "Marama, please, let's talk about this somewhere else." But somewhere else was how this family had survived for years, moving conversations behind closed doors, smoothing over harm, burying what hurt. Somewhere else kept us broken. So I stayed where I was. "Not this time," I said, my voice steady. "Everything stays in the light." Beckett handed her the final notice. Termination, restitution review, access revoked. She tried to speak, but no words formed. Her world wasn't collapsing because of me, Song. It was collapsing because it had been built on stolen beams. I closed the laptop and left the barbecue without raising my voice once. Quiet power, the kind my mother lived with. The next evening, Dad showed up at my door holding an envelope. He stepped inside uninvited, the way he always had, like every room belonged to him just by existing in it. "Skylar's devastated," he began. "This situation at the barbecue, it went too far." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I replied. He slammed the envelope on the table. $250,000, your mother's inheritance. Take it. Drop everything. Let your sister get her job back." I looked at the envelope. Heavy, crisp, familiar. My whole childhood had been full of things like this. His solutions, his decisions, his bargains. Silence bought. Boundaries ignored, everything negotiable. But now I saw something else too. He didn't bring money to fix a problem. He brought money to maintain a pattern. I lifted the envelope. Where did this come from? He hesitated just a little too long. Before he could answer, Tate appeared at the door, out of breath, holding her phone. "I need to show you something." Dad's face tightened. "Tate, go home." She brushed past him, small, scared, brave. "No, not this time." On her screen were charity ledgers, his charity, the one he managed, transfers, missing funds, the $75,000 Skylar used for her condo down payment, a consulting fee that never existed. I looked at Dad. Not angry, not shocked, just tired. "You stole from scholarships," I said quietly, "from kids who needed it." He blustered, reaching for the phone. "This is private family business." "Embezzlement isn't private," Tate said softly. She wasn't accusing him. She wasn't defending me. She was just telling the truth, something none of us had been allowed to do. I held up the check. "This isn't from Mom. It's from the charity." His face crumpled, not in guilt, but in fear of being seen. And I realized something I hadn't understood until that exact second. Power never came from being louder. Real power came from refusing to let someone else write your story. I tore the check in half, then again and again. The pieces drifted to the floor like tiny white leaves. "No more," I said. Dad stepped back as if the air itself pushed him away. "You'll regret this." He left without another word. Tate sank onto my couch, knees drawn up. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know what else to do." I sat beside her, quiet. "Thank you for telling the truth." And something softened in her shoulders, like she had waited years for someone to say that. Maybe we both had. In the weeks that followed, everything slowed. The noise faded, the messages stopped. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space, breathing room, a place where my life could expand without someone else shrinking it. Skylar tried to reach out once more, emails filled with apologies that dissolved into blame, then circled back into desperation. Dad sent one last letter, the kind meant to tug at old wounds. "Family survives mistakes," he wrote. "Don't turn your back on us." But the truth was simple. I wasn't turning my back. I was finally stepping out of the shadow they had kept me in. I forwarded everything to Elena. She sent a final cease and desist, crisp and calm, the way boundaries should be. The online whispers dried up overnight. Clients who mattered stayed. The ones who didn't drifted away quietly, and I found I didn't miss them. I moved to Denver shortly after. New office, new light, new air. My apartment overlooked Union Station. Trains sliding through the evening like quiet reminders that life keeps moving. I stood on the rooftop one night, city lights blinking like small, steady truths. Below me, everything I built continued, because it had always been built by my hands, my hours, my heart. Word trickled in slowly about the family I left behind. Skylar's industry blacklist, Dad's probation, Tina's separation. I didn't celebrate any of it. I didn't resent it either. Consequences weren't revenge. They were reflections. Echoes of choices made long before I stopped carrying the weight of them. What surprised me most was Tate. She didn't try contacting me again. Instead, she transferred schools, joined a volunteer program, started building something of her own, quietly, steadily. And maybe that was the first sign that cycles don't always continue. Sometimes they end with someone brave enough to tell the truth. On my rooftop, I let the wind lift my hair, cool against my neck. For once, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Cutting ties wasn't about winning. It was about healing in a way that didn't require anyone else to lose. Some endings aren't loud. Some are just peace. Have you ever had to choose your own peace over the version of you someone else insisted on?